Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, artists, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about the show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. Visit www.redaphid.com. It's Tuesday, May 6th, and it's 4:20 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. We here at NORML would like to remind you to get involved in the cannabis civil rights movement and join us here at NORML. You can learn everything you need to know at NORML.org. Make a donation, write a letter, attend a rally. It all starts with you. Call your Congress at 202-224-3121. They'll ask your zip code and put you in touch with your elected officials. Tell them to support H.R. 5842 and H.R. 5843 to end DEA raids in medical marijuana states and legalize personal possession of pot. It still is a government of we the people, but you have to step up and do your part. Tuesday is Government at Work Day on the podcast, and coming up after the news, we're going to speak with D. Paul Stanford, Executive Director of the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation's chain of medical marijuana clinics in 6 western states. Paul has some excellent news about the defeat of a plan to repeal Oregon's highly successful self-funded medical marijuana program and the launch of the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act for 2010. After that, Cannabis Carey brings us the secret agent of the counterculture, the undercover hippie. His new album, They Feed on Greed, features an instant cannabis classic called Too Stoned that we're playing for you today. We'll wrap up today with another look at the Global Marijuana March this last weekend with 2 activists straight from the heartland. We've got James Getman from Iowa NORML and Stephen Eisenhower from Southwest Indiana NORML here to give us a review of their events and their take on the chances for cannabis reform in the Midwest. So sit back and relax with your favorite strain. This is your NORML Daily Audio Stash. Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Global Marijuana March meets heavy-handed opposition. Well, yesterday I told you about a lot of the cities in America and Canada and around the world that participated in the Global Marijuana March on Saturday. And most of these, by and large, were peaceful protests because most of these countries respect the freedom of speech and the freedom to protest. Unfortunately, not every country is that way, and I came upon a harrowing tale from Moscow, Russia, from an activist there with the Cannabis Legalize League, who said, quote, "We published an official statement on the CLL site so that both authorities and activists could learn that no marches would be held in Moscow in 2008. We instead invited our supporters to come to the Friendship of Nations fountain at the All Russia Exhibition Center. We made it quite clear there should be no banners or other means of political propaganda, only thematic clothes, excellent mood, and musical instruments." As soon as the statement was published, we received an aggressive reaction from the Federal Service of Drug Control, the Russian version of the DEA. In the interview to one of the most famous Russian news agencies, the head of the informational department of the FSDC, Alexander Mikhailov, commented on our action in the following words, quote, "Legalization of cannabis as a drug is out of the question. The theme mustn't be discussed at all. Such actions are the grossest breach of the peace and hooliganism." End quote. When we arrived at the Friendship of Nations on May 3rd, we found out that the fountain was blocked by military forces and metal fences. Members of the military forces and plainclothes special police pulled from the crowd everybody who seemed suspicious to them, no matter if it was a Rastafarian, a punk, an emo, or just a long-haired guy. In a few minutes, 8 persons were arrested without any reasons. Some of them knew nothing about the action and came to the All Russia Exhibition Center just to have fun on the holiday. All the journalists who managed to film the arrests were forced to erase their videos and photos under threat of arrest and/or spoiling of their cameras. 40 minutes later, I was sitting in a company of 8 or 10 people 200 meters from the fountain. We did nothing and spent our time chatting and waiting for the other activists so that we could go to a more peaceful place. We just wanted to change our location when a band of the military police came near us and asked us to stay where we were. As I remembered clearly the last year's march, and as it was still possible to get out, I tried to run away. I was lucky to reach the exit from the All Russia Exhibition Center when a back heel of a non-uniformed person stopped me. 2 seconds of free fall, and I was lying on the ground. As I wasn't able to stand up myself, the members of the military force began to beat me. I don't remember the moment I got to the military bus. The left side of my body was injured, but the men in the bus denied me any medical assistance. I could receive help only in the police station. Our treatment in the police station was much better than last year. Only one guy of about 15 of our arrested supporters was subjected to pressure from the policeman. It took us 2 hours to understand the reason of our imprisoning. It sounded very funny and absolutely illegal. The reason for our detention was that the Federal Service of Drug Control just wanted to speak to us about the harm of drugs and any actions devoted to their legalization. So after 3 hours in the police department, all of us were released from custody without any claims, fees, or protocols and could continue the cannabis walk. As a result of this amiable drug education lesson with the representatives of law, I now have a fracture of the clavicle and several less painful but much more effective injuries, a good illustration of their methods of leading discussion, as well as a good occasion for further legal struggle. So when you hear the stories from those activists who are putting their bodies on the line for ending adult marijuana prohibition, all of us here at NORML in America, Canada, and around the world, our hearts go out to you, and thank you so much for standing up for what is right. Representative John Conyers challenges DEA raids on medical marijuana states. Congressman John Conyers, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, has responded to the requests of numerous citizens as well as the cities of Los Angeles and San Francisco regarding the use of federal DEA resources in enforcement of marijuana laws against patients legally using medical marijuana under state law. The Conyers letter, sent to acting DEA Administrator Michelle Leonhardt, asks for the administration's response to the complaints in advance of hearings to be held in front of the Judiciary Committee. Conyers' questions include: is the use of civil asset forfeiture, which has typically been reserved for the worst drug traffickers and kingpins, an appropriate tactic to employ against individuals who suffer from severe or chronic illnesses and are authorized to use medical marijuana under California law? Has the DEA conducted any analysis of the potential economic consequences of using civil asset forfeiture in an area that is experiencing some of the nation's sharpest declines in property values? Has the DEA considered the consequences of shutting down legally operated public dispensaries and whether that might drive the cannabis sales activity underground? Given the increasing level of trafficking and violence associated with the international drug cartels across Mexico, South America, and elsewhere, do you think the DEA's limited resources are best utilized conducting enforcement raids on individuals and their caregivers who are conducting themselves legally under California law? Have you considered that DEA activities against qualified individuals is negatively impacting the ability of state and local officials across California to collect tax revenue, which they are entitled to under California law? Every month, new science supporting the therapeutic value of cannabis is published, As a result, medical and scientific organizations like the American College of Physicians and the American Psychiatric Association are urging reform of laws that place in legal jeopardy physicians or their individual patients who may benefit from the use of cannabis. As the administrator, you have the discretion to decide whether to continue heightened enforcement activities in California and in other states that have authorized the use of medical cannabis by qualified individuals. Please explain what role, if any, emerging scientific data plays in your decision-making process to conduct enforcement raids on individuals authorized to use or provide medical cannabis under state law. Would you support the creation of an intergovernmental commission comprised of law enforcement, lawmakers, and people affected by the laws to review policy and provide recommendations that aim to bring harmony to federal and state laws? While Conyers awaits the response from the DEA, let me play the psychic and predict what the DEA's answers to those questions will be. No, 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 none, and no. From the drug warrior's perspective, the marijuana is the linchpin in the grand profit scheme that is the war on certain American citizens using non-pharmaceutical, non-alcoholic, tobacco-free drugs. According to the Survey on Drug Use and Health from 2006, marijuana is by far the most popular drug used in America in the past year, with over 25 million people who have used marijuana at least once in a year. That compares to only a little more than 6 million people who have used cocaine and about 500,000 people that have used heroin. Without the marijuana users, there are too few illicit drug users to justify the enormous budgets of paramilitary police organizations. Without the marijuana users, who, unlike users of other drugs, will pee dirty for 30 days and not 3, there aren't enough positive drug tests to maintain the income of companies whose livelihood depends on drug testing. Without the marijuana users who are sentenced by so-called drug courts, there aren't enough non-violent socially redeemable offenders to support the budgets of drug treatment centers. Most important, without the marijuana users, the numbers just aren't large enough to scare the public with the fear of tens of millions of druggies on the street. The survival of the war on drugs concept is based on fear. How many times have you seen a news graphic for a story on drugs that shows a marijuana leaf, a line of cocaine, and a heroin syringe? They need to maintain the illusion that all drugs are equally bad in order to justify SWAT raids on gardeners and disabled people. Mannix drops initiative to repeal Oregon's Medical Marijuana Act. From the Willamette Week. Conservative ballot measure supremo Kevin Mannix just told Willamette Week he and his cohorts are dropping a proposed ballot initiative to kill the Oregon medical marijuana program. Mannix says, quote, "That petition's going to stop this week. There was not enough time or money to gather the 82,769 valid signatures needed." Mannix says the decision to drop the petition drive had nothing to do with lack of public support, but rather lack of resources. The so-called Oregon Crime Fighting Act would have done 3 things: given repeat major felony sex offenders a minimum 25-year sentence, made third-strike DUI convictions a felony, and replaced medical marijuana with prescription THC pills. Mannix told Willamette Week that the ballot initiative, which he drafted, had financial support from the Florida-based nonprofit Save Our Society from Drugs. He says backers may return with another effort to gut medical marijuana in the 2010 election. How about Save Our Society from Ignorance? This was the most shameful attempt to repeal medical marijuana in the second state to enact such protection for seriously ill and disabled people. Mannix is a well-known conservative troublemaker in my state. He's the man behind our ill-fated Measure 11, a state-level get-tough-on-crime mandatory minimum sentencing scheme that has helped overcrowd Oregon's prisons and led us to spending more money on prisons than colleges. He's lost a couple of attempts to become governor and is now eyeing the federal congressional seat of the retiring Representative Darlene Hooley.
Just say no.
No matter what you call it, it's a huge part of popular culture.
Where'd you learn that, Cheech?
Drug school.
You don't need weed school. You just need a copy of the new book, Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life.
Hey, this is great, man.
Even if you never smoked marijuana.
I never used marijuana. Sorry.
Don't think you smoked marijuana.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two and didn't inhale.
Or you used to smoke marijuana.
I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Pot Culture by former High Times editor Steve Bloom and Shirley Halperin will answer every question you ever had about marijuana culture.
Has that marijuana made it back up here yet?
Check out Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life at Amazon.com or visit potculturebook.com today.
Too bad, man. I just stopped smoking yesterday.
We're joined now by Paul Stanford, who is the director of the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, who runs medical marijuana clinics in 6 western states. Paul, welcome to the Daily Audio Stash.
Thank you, Russ. Great to be here.
Well, we reported on some big news coming out of Oregon in that Republican activist Kevin Mannix, who had been threatening a bill called, or an initiative called the Oregon Crime Fighting Act. Turns out he's withdrawn that initiative. Tell our listeners a little bit about what this initiative would have done to medical marijuana in the state of Oregon.
Well, it would have entirely gutted the medical marijuana law, replacing it with a state-mandated prescription program so that medical marijuana patients would be forced to use Marinol or prescription THC, which is very expensive and not very effective for most patients.
What did Mannix say was the reasoning behind wanting to have this initiative? What was his reasoning for wanting to get rid of the Medical Marijuana Act?
Apparently there's a Florida group that was willing to fund this initiative, and he seemed to think that there was public support for it. I'm sure in circulating it in recent months, he found there was no support. You know, he tied it to a sex crimes bill that would increase penalties for sex crimes offenders. So it's very hard for any of us to be against imprisoning sex crime offenders, but he tied it to the medical marijuana change and called it the Oregon Crime Fighting Act. So it was one of those Orwellian-type names that hid its true agenda.
Now, is there evidence in the state of Oregon of any sort of abuse or massive increase in crime since the passage of the 1998 Medical Marijuana Act in the state?
No, just the opposite. They've shown that the use by kids has actually gone down. But yeah, I'm sure that the reason that Kevin Mannix decided to withdraw this is because he's running for Congress. He decided that there's an open Congress seat, a congressional seat there in his district, with the withdrawal of Darlene Hooley, a Democrat, for the past several terms, has decided to retire. So he's running for Congress, and I'm sure he saw that this is very unpopular and could hurt his congressional bid.
Kevin Mannix was talking about replacing the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act with a prescription Marinol program that would be underwritten by the taxpayers of the state. Why is Marinol such a bad alternative for so many medical marijuana patients?
Well, first of all, the only component in Marinol is synthetic THC, and it turns out that the active ingredient that helps patients the most in medical marijuana isn't the THC, but CBD or cannabidiol. THC is good for anxiety and depression, which are only covered in California. It's also good for nausea if you can keep the pills down, and as an appetite stimulant. But for pain, spasms, seizures, glaucoma, and spastic disorders, it's much better to use CBD or cannabidiol, and that's not available pharmaceutically currently. It's only available through organic cannabis.
Now, as far as this act would treat the state of Oregon, Oregon's program is completely self-funded, I understand, and this prescription Marinol program would have been funded by the taxpayers?
Exactly. That's another big component of it. The Marinol is very expensive. I could see it easily costing $2,000 or $3,000 a month for each medical marijuana patient to use Marinol. And that'd be a incredible burden on taxpayers.
Yes, instead of having patients growing their own or getting someone to grow their own medicine at a much substantially lower cost, I'd imagine.
Exactly. Right now, medical marijuana patients, by and large, lower their medical expenses dramatically by using medical marijuana compared to most other pharmaceuticals. And Marinol, in particular, is a very expensive pharmaceutical. I know the 10 milligram pills cost about $20 each. you've got nausea and you throw a few of those up, they can get very expensive.
Absolutely. Now, how many people would this have affected in the state of Oregon? How many patients are you currently running now?
Well, I think the state of Oregon is pushing 20,000 patients now. I think we're at about 18,000. I haven't looked at the numbers lately. Our clinic takes care of a little over half of those. It would be a dramatic increase in expenditures if the state had to buy Marinol. We're just incredibly happy that he's decided to pull this.
It's good to hear you won't have to waste time and resources having to beat back yet another assault on what is, by all accounts, a very popular and well-run program in the state of Oregon. And that leads us to what's coming up in the future here. You'll be able to put your time and money toward a more important measure that's not just for medical marijuana. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act of 2010?
Well, we've designed a bill that implements a system of controls that's mandated by the Single Convention Treaty. There are a number of international treaties that govern the way controlled substances can be distributed, and the Single Convention Treaty is the first and most important. And international treaties carry the same weight as the Constitution itself in federal proceedings. So we think by implementing the system of controls mandated by international treaty that we stand a much better chance in being upheld in the inevitable federal court challenge this bill would face after passage. What the OCTA, or the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, would do would be to legalize the cultivation of marijuana by individuals over the age of 21 for personal use. It would license the cultivation for sale, and the state would take possession of the entire crop and sell it through state stores. Those could be the current liquor stores if the current liquor stores' licensees decided they wanted to get that license, or it could be stores that decided just to sell cannabis through this state system. It would also put cannabis at cost in pharmacies for patients, and it would restore industrial hemp. We think that selling cannabis through the state stores would raise hundreds of millions of dollars for state revenue on an annual basis, and we direct those monies to go into the state general fund at 90% of the proceeds. 8% of the funds would go to establish drug treatment programs for addicts that currently are being turned away from seeking drug treatment. You know, alcoholics and addicts can't get the help they need in most cases, so this would provide that. Then 1% would go for a comprehensive and realistic drug education program for kids in high schools. Finally, the last 1% would go to promote industrial hemp and the new Oregon industrial hemp crop for fiber, protein, oil, and energy.
So you're beginning to collect signatures now for this ballot measure that would take place in 2010?
In July. We can start gathering signatures in July. So we're in the process of preparing for the campaign and not having to concentrate on Mannix's Crime Fighting Act gives us a lot more time to work on this initiative, which is a lot nearer and dearer to our heart.
And one of the things I really like about this petitioning is that you've decided to go ahead and print the petitions on hemp paper.
Yep, we're going to go with 100% hemp paper that was specially made for us in Germany by Grumman.
It's sad that we have to go to Germany to get paper, isn't it?
Well, you know, if this thing passes, we'll be making all of our hemp paper right here in the Great Northwest. I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, that's the OCTA 2010. You can get more information about that by checking out the internet at cannabistaxact.org. And for the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, you've heard on our ads, you can reach them at thc-foundation.org. Paul Stanford is the executive director of the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, running these medical marijuana clinics throughout 6 western states, also the head of the Campaign for the Restoration and Regulation of Hemp, and also on the TV and YouTube at Cannabis Common Sense. You can find all of that through the website link at hemp.org. Paul, thanks for joining us again on the Daily Audio Stash.
Thank you, Russ.
I smoke lots of weed, man. I plant that big old seed, man. I smoke every strain there is in town. From the super sticky green to the headache Mexican brown. I smoked every strain there is around.
I know that I like it. I know that lots of people like it. So let's see what happens if you overdo it.
Do we have any pot smokers here today? Any dogs?
My name is Doug Benson, and I'm about to get super high.
The term medical marijuana, you've basically, you drank the Kool-Aid. because there is no such thing as medical marijuana.
I'm going to smoke pot every day for 30 days and try to remember to film it.
And my movie's going to be called Super High Me.
Or Business as Usual. I haven't decided yet on the title.
I'm going to be hospitalized, I think.
Some people call it dope. Some think it smells like burning rope. I tell you, it relieves my mind.
Here at the NORML Daily Audio Stash, we work hard to change our nation's marijuana laws through education and discussion. But we also take the time to relax and unwind with an eclectic mix of pod-safe music from many independent artists. We look for music that speaks to the growing truth about cannabis, or music that speaks to broader themes of freedom, liberty, social justice, equality, and protest. To find out more about the artists and download the music you hear on this podcast, just log on to stash.normal.org. And if you'd like to get your music heard by the online cannabis community, just send us an email at stash@normal.org. Welcome to the break, Stashers. The Undercover Hippie brings us a danky hit with his song, Too Stoned. Starting out as a DJ at age 16, this UK artist spent years as the MC for the Gorilla Collective, a drum and bass collective based in Singapore. In 2002, he sold his turntables and bought a guitar. It seems to have been a great career move, as he now plays music all over the world. This great toker tune comes from his first album, They Feed on Greed, and it is an instant cannabis classic. You can visit his website, undercoverhippie.com, to learn more about this wonderful and quirky artist, hear more of his music, and purchase his album. You can also get a download of this tune from our website at stash.normal.org. This is The Undercover Hippie and Too Stoned.
Hit round stews on Ryland Crescent for some blow. The room is full, but Stu's the only one I know. The smoker's rules require us stay around, at least for just one split. But then the bong it makes around, soon I'm on my bed.
I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned.
Bloodshot eyes make contact briefly through the smoke. He smiles at me as though secretly I'm a joke. And then I realize that everyone is laughing at me now. Well, I just can't trust anyone. You know I need to live somehow. Yeah, 'cause I'm a little bit too stoned.
I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned.
Stu, your mate, looking a little bit green. He's alright, mate.
He's just doing a whitey.
I want to leave but don't remember how I came. My legs declare their independence now from my brain. And as I hide behind my eyelids, conversing on my own, stranger stares bore into me, and so we'll pack another cone and get myself just a little more too stoned.
I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned.
This temporary madness has taken hold of me, yeah. I guess I should be glad this will leave eventually. Some people, they have to deal with this shit 7 days a week, yeah. But luckily, That's not the case with me, because I'm just a little bit too stoned.
I get a little bit too stoned.
Too stoned.
I get a little bit too stoned.
Too stoned.
I get a little bit too stoned.
Too stoned.
I get a little bit too stoned.
Too stoned.
I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned. I get a little bit too stoned.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 12 states today, and THCF has medical clinics in 6 of those states. Our physicians help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms as in multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help them obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, Colorado, Nevada, Hawaii, and California. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at www.hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
All right, well, this last weekend we had the Global Marijuana March that took place all over the country and all over the world. And right in the heartland of America, Des Moines, Iowa, featured the folks at Iowa NORML marching for the end of adult marijuana prohibition. We're speaking now by telephone with the director of Iowa NORML, James Getman. Thanks, James, for joining us here on the Daily Audio Stash.
Sure thing. Yeah, we had a pretty good time. The forecast called for rain, and the rain cleared off, and the skies cleared up, but we had extremely high winds. So everybody that came, they didn't hang around too long because it was kind of cold, but we had about 100 or so come to the steps of the Capitol building, and myself and 3 other people gave some speeches, and we passed out quite a bit of literature, and then we moved on down to Birdland Park, where we had a party in a pavilion with 4 bands. The environment down there was kind of smoky, especially around 4:20 time, but we didn't have any trouble with law enforcement. They just kind of drove to the park and waved and said, okay. Everything was pretty cool. We had a good time. A lot of people learned about cannabis prohibition and what we were trying to do here in Iowa to end it. One thing we had some good news was I reported that the Ron Paul revolution is building momentum in the Iowa Republican Party, and the Iowa Democrats still support cannabis law reform, such as decriminalization, industrial hemp, and medical marijuana. The bad news is that, unfortunately, the legislature has failed to act on any of our requests for making law changes. So I guess this next election time, if they aren't going to listen to us, I've been telling people that you tell these guys that are campaigning, if that you don't want to do anything about cannabis laws, then I'm not going to vote for you.
That's right. We've got to stand up for our rights and let our officials know that our votes depend on how they stand on the marijuana issue. Did you get any favorable coverage in your local news media there?
I think there might have been a story or something in one of the small papers, but unfortunately we didn't have any TV or radio or any of the big boys. I don't know. We've been doing this for 7 or 8 years now, and I guess it's just old news or something.
Now, where can people go on the internet to be able to catch videos or pictures of your march there in Iowa?
I've got pictures, and when I get around to it, I'll get video. If you search for myspace.com/QCHemp, and that'll pull up my MySpace page, and you can click on the pictures and video links there.
And how about folks that want to get in touch with Iowa NORML? How can they get involved with Iowa NORML?
You go to the Iowa NORML website, or you just search for Iowa NORML on Google, but I believe it's www.iowanormal.org.
All right. Well, James Getman, the director of Iowa NORML, thanks for joining us here on the Daily Audio Stash. Continuing our look at the Global Marijuana March that took place this weekend, we're also moving back to the Midwest to Indiana, where we're speaking with Stephen Eisenhower, who's the founder and chairman of Southwest Indiana NORML. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So tell us about your march this weekend. What happened? How many people did you have show up?
Well, unlike last year, we made the trek up to Indy to celebrate it up there with the people at Indy NORML. And this year we decided to do a little something on our own down here. It consists of, we were some members, me and 5 other members, were the guest speakers at the called an ASC Info Shop, and they're a discussion group here locally that tackles some pretty interesting subjects and subject matter. And so we took our literature there, and then the main thing, the flyers that we had printed out was why is cannabis illegal, and what are the true medical facts on it. And so I had to give a short speech, and we had flyers we handed out and information, and then, like I said, we took questions and answers. So the really informal, informational project that we partook this year, a little different than last year, other than renting a space in a park, or which we may do that again, because that was definitely more entertaining and fun, I would say. This was more informational and kind of down to the bare tacks of what NORML stands for and what we're trying to do. There's some misconception there on the medical part, and NORML has, you know, traditionally been recreational, but we see that the medical part is going to be probably the big door opener for recreational down the line. So if we can get medical get it legalized, and we think the other will follow suit. It was entertaining. We had fun doing it, and like I said, a lot of good subject matter was brought up by a lot of young people. That always excites me when young people get involved, because they naturally are going to be carrying the banner on, you know, down the road. And so I talked about them getting out and getting a vote. The young people are, you know, need to get out and vote. Let's get these people that are in there with these narrow-minded thoughts and reasoning in the office that's in there now, get them out and maybe try to get a different mindset in there. You know, our reasonable call for justice is long overdue.
Certainly.
And, it's just not right to be, because I choose to smoke an herb, a flower that's been around for thousands of years, that I'm a criminal and can be arrested and punished for it and imprisoned. You know, otherwise, I'm otherwise a law-abiding citizen, as most of us are, almost all of us. But because we choose to use this herb, we're criminals. And so that's the ultimate goal, and that was kind of the main speaking point. And, of course, we did go into the medical aspects of it. And like I said, it was really informative, and I think it sparked a lot of interest. We had one new member sign up. So, you know, somebody said we just had one. Well, one, you know, is one.
is one more.
One is 100. So we was tickled to death to put on the presentation there Saturday and explain the Million Marijuana March. I think people didn't realize it was 200 cities across the world, and so it's kind of an eye-opener to a lot of people that don't have any idea that the stuff they see on TV and the advertisement on marijuana is just a bunch of bogus, false rhetoric. So it was very informative, and we had a good time. I look forward to doing either that or something like it in the near future.
What is the reaction and the climate from the general public down there in southwestern Indiana toward cannabis law reform?
Well, you know, whether you know it or not, Indiana is one of the reddest states in the Union. Pretty conservative, ultra-conservative, I might say. And, you know, it's frustrating sometimes that even the general public doesn't have any idea. They still think it's, you know, just an awful thing to be using marijuana. They, of course, you know, it's classified as a Schedule I drug, and that's definitely not right. But it's pretty conservative down here. It's hard to get people to come out. Even a lot of people, I won't say a lot, I have a few people that are interested in what we're doing, but they can't join because they're teachers, lawyers, and doctors, and actually they can't step out front and say, you know, that we're for it. But a lot of them are. I won't say most of them, but a lot of them are. But it is pretty conservative around here, and I keep telling our members and our people that, you know, unfortunately, old Indiana might be one of the last states to ever decriminalize it or legalize it. But that's not going to stop us from trying, because putting people in prison for marijuana is just not right.
Well, we often focus on Indiana because you are the home of one of the most ardent drug warriors in the federal Congress, Representative Mark Souter.
Right.
And he was the sponsor of the Higher Education Act to eliminate college scholarships and federal money for students who get caught with a joint. So it's definitely an issue we're taking a look at.
Sure.
Do you think the people in Indiana, though, sometime soon might be able to be talked into medical marijuana? What do you see of the chances of that issue?
Oh, it's definitely going that way. I mean, more and more people are seeing that, especially since the medical part has come up. It's not just the the hippies from the 70s out in a grassy field getting high and partying. We still would like to do that, but now they're saying that it really is a lot of normal everyday your next door neighbor that is wanting to use it or is using it for medical purposes, but can't really come out and say. And of course, doctors here are reluctant to, for sure they can't prescribe it, but even recommend it for, fear of prosecution and losing their license. So, but the more and more people we talk to, the general public, and I'm talking about not just young people, they're more naturally for it in the middle age or older people, but even the older people and the clergy is starting to swing and see that, the laws and penalties are much worse than any harm that or dangers that marijuana possesses. So it's gradually coming around to us for it. So, we can only just keep trying and getting it. We've almost turned into an educational aspect of NORML to try to educate the public to what really is going on and not these commercials. Because like you said, billions of dollars being spent on all these lies and fabrications that are coming on that you see on TV and commercials. So it's an uphill battle. It's all about the money.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be a slow process, but we're taking baby steps and we are moving forward. So.
Well, we always like to offer support to those activists that are fighting in the toughest and most conservative states. I feel for you. I'm in Portland, Oregon right now, which is probably one of the most liberal places for marijuana in America. But I'm originally from Boise, Idaho, so another one of those red conservative states that start with an I. So I understand the battle.
You for sure know what an uphill battle we're fighting here, but we got a lot of loyal people that are staying as true, and we're just going to keep doing it until we get something did.
Well, let's get you some more help. How can people get involved with Southwest Indiana NORML? Is there a website or a phone number they could get to you?
Yes, they can get a hold of me on my website. It is Southwest Indiana NORML.
It's just SW?
wildblue.net. And they can contact me, and I can tell them what they want to do or how they can help on any level that they may want to do, whether it's just phone calls, letter writing to the congressmen, or if the naturalists want to try to help with some monetary donations, or for sure join the national NORML in Washington, D.C. It's all. I hate to say it, but it's all about the money. I mean, we got billions of dollars the government's putting into it, funding the war against marijuana. And so, unfortunately, it's going to take maybe us to run some commercials on TV and radios, debunking their thoughts and reasoning behind the war on marijuana.
Well, we may be lacking in the funds that the federal government has, but at least we've got truth, logic, and compassion on our side. Let's give that website address out once again. SW, was it?
It's SW, Indiana, NORML, at wildblue.net.
wildblue.net. We'll have a link to that up on our blog at stash.normal.org, so you can click right through and get in touch with Southwest Indiana NORML. We've been speaking with Stephen Eisenhower, who is the founder and chair of Southwest Indiana NORML. Thanks for joining us on our Daily Audio Stash.
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.normal.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with another cannabis quote from our first president, George Washington. Quote, "Make the most of the Indian hemp seed and sow it everywhere." End quote. Well, you heard the man. Do your patriotic duty and get to sowing those hemp seeds. I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Audio Stash. Remember, I'm calling on all activists out there in your local NORML chapters to get in touch with us here at stash@normal.org. we can help you promote your events and get your news out to the entire worldwide cannabis community. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.